reading
Matt,
into that.
on your point, if you don't, just before we go to the next question, have it. So on your point, Matt, so one of the things that I'm very conscious of, right? Can you get your take on how this happens? One of the things we're very conscious of, we've built a lot of our platform around work packages, right? It's an outcome based. It's not just hire someone. It's they're based on outcomes, right? You get paid on different deliverables, or if it's a really short piece of work, great, but it's an outcome based. But the next piece of functionality, which we've built, we've just not launched it yet, is actually around a team statement of work, right? So there's an overall deliverable, and then there is a team of freelancers pulled together, right? So that will then have a project delivery from it, or customer success, or project delivery from our side to qualifying scope, and then pulled together. Now, one of the things that I always think about that though is from a technology perspective, that can work, and it can be a cost saving and probably a productivity boost for the client, right? Definitely a cost saving. Mm-hmm. But there's always comes down to the credibility, right? You go with the big four, or you go with Accenture, you go whatever, you know, or IBM. No, they get fired bringing in IBM, right? Is the old, exactly. That's a pretty old one, right? So how do you see the platform companies being able to gain more credibility to be able to win more of that type of work?
Yes. So what you hit on is the credibility piece, which I think the credibility piece, there's numerous ways, but at the end of the day, it comes down to earning the trust of the decision maker, and usually the decision maker's boss. And this is where it can be different when we're talking about large company and more entrepreneurial. But so from a large company perspective, you need to be able to show that this exact person that's doing the work, meaning the eyeballs of that person, has done the exact outcome that you're looking for, so that when you hire that person, it's not like you're taking a bet. Like, it's a decision that every other rational human would make. So that's one thing that we've especially seen through Venturel, is that it's not just here's all of my portfolio. It is here is my customized portfolio, meaning here is the exact example of me doing this prior. Because if you kind of think about it, right? I mean, and listen, we're never going to get to 100%. Like, this is a classic engineering optimization problem where you get to 97%, and then that extra 3% just isn't worth investing all that time into. And so if we take 100 leaders, 97 are going to be okay with this, but 3, like, we're never going to be able to get them. But so that's the number one thing that we've seen, is that if you can give them the exact comparable outcome that what they're looking for, and prove, and this is where freelancing is so different. You're seeing the whites of that freelancer's eyes. Now, we do have some security problems in that, can we confirm that the person doing the work is the person that you can see on the other side? I've yet to see a model that makes that work fully. I've seen, virtual desktoping, and there's been a bunch of blockchain things that people have pitched me. I don't know. But that's the number one thing, is do you have an exact comparable? The second thing, so like the secondary metric, is then making sure that you don't just immediately jump into bed with someone, but you instead gradually build up that trust, which is also what's different with freelancers. So I never hire a freelancer fully, and I never interview a freelancer. I start by having them work on a very, very small piece of work to make sure that it's the right fit, sort of both qualitatively and quantitatively, to make sure they can do the work. So not only do you need proof of, have you done this exact work item, and maybe in that proof too is past recommendations. Like, a lot of this stuff, we're not creating anything new. We're just curating what's been old in a digital and remote fashion. But so the second thing though is getting started in a very, very small and risk-free way. And the way that we would do this with a lot of large companies, a lot of leaders, is they all need something like market research, and they all need something like a thought leadership article. And we would go leader to leader and just say things like, hey, do you want a report on your 5 competitors? And it'll be $500. And if it doesn't work, it's fine. It's not sizable or material to you. Yeah. Or we would say, hey, the speech that you did a week ago, we have a transcript of the notes. Do you want to turn that into an article? So those are the two things we've seen, is sort of a customized portfolio example, and then a very, very low risk, low dollar amount way to get started. If you do those two things, like, you can basically mitigate 97% of the risk.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And that's kind of what a lot of how we're going to go about it, because we want to try and take on some of the bigger projects that traditionally would have went, the other way, just get the person in and just hope for the best because they're paying for it. That means it'll be fine. So we really want to try and disrupt that Um,
And
cool.
one thing I'd add, Rich, though, because I did leave it out, but some of the aha moments that we would see with leaders, and this has been forever in my career working with freelancers, is like we can't underestimate the fact that you can see the person's whites of their eyes. And even though we're talking digital remote, the fact that when you go to an agency, like you usually don't know who's working on your project. And if you ask and you want to inquire, you just get more account managers or you get a project manager if you're really talking to the source, supposedly.
Yeah.
With freelancers, you see exactly who that person is. And that was usually the unlock. And you're not going to convert all leaders, right? But the unlock was usually when we would say, oh yeah, here's the exact person, look at their resume. And it was so hyper relevant to that exact example of what they needed, even if the person was sitting in New Zealand, Japan. One example was with the motorcycle manufacturer, they needed a Bluetooth engineer, and they couldn't just find any Bluetooth engineer. Like they needed a Bluetooth engineer that was good at motorcycles. Really hard to find.
Yeah.
But they found an enthusiast sitting in Japan that actually loved their brand. Like that's not going to happen if you go to a traditional agency. That it's just not possible. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Harvey, back to you. Sorry, I keep having follow-on questions.
No, it's quite all right. Cool. So kind of keeping in the trend of UK and freelance wise, obviously the UK freelance market is, shall we say, quite a wee bit further behind compared to you guys. So kind of big question from us would be, what are your kind of overall thoughts on the way that UK freelance market kind of is at the moment and where it's hoping to go over the next probably like 5 to 10 years?
Behind, but not in a bad position. And
what
I mean by that is that the infrastructure is there for freelance to really thrive. And when I say infrastructure, what I mean by that is highly educated and highly creative talent. And our platform is around 15 to 20% UK based. We're around 70% global, 30% US, and 15, 20% just in the UK. And there's something very unique about the UK in regards to freelancing. And I'm still trying to put a thumb on it because I'm not native, so I'm looking purely as an outsider. And what I see is that there is a certain level of creativity that is tough to find around. Like that's what I would say differentiates a UK freelancer. And this fits generally within the writing, journalism, design, and like low development that I've seen this really, really thrives. And I think it's because you do have a strong agency culture, and it's just the natural evolution of people that worked in an agency. Generally, that the best freelancers come out of people who had worked in agency because they look and they say, this is so inefficient. Like I can make a much better process and I don't need this master overlord taking my business. I can do this myself. But so that's the first thing, is that there is a very, very good freelancing population, at least from what I've seen, that is, they don't have to convert or they don't have to upskill as much, like they're ready to roll. The second thing though is, and this is where we're still seeing, right? We're still trying to figure it out. And you actually might be doing better than the US at this point. So you have IR35. To my understanding, IR35 is trying to make sure that you don't have a freelancer that's basically a shadow contractor who works for just one company 40 hours a week, but doesn't want to pay the specific VAT or the specific tax. That's not a bad thing for the freelance economy. If IR35, if the implication is that it forces freelancers to have multiple clients and you can't just be one shadow contractor, then that actually forces the freelance economy. It's like a forcing function to make it grow faster than it already is and make it purely a freelance economy, not just like this, incremental adjustment to freelancing. So if that is the implication of IR35, and that's the way I understand it, then that actually positions you in a very, very, very strong position. In terms of weaknesses, I mean, there's a general price weakness. If you're going to hire someone out of the UK versus hire someone out of, say, Croatia or Southeast Asia, there's going to be a price difference, obviously. So there's that general weakness. Now, quick contrast, though, to what could be happening in the US. Now, the US, got to take it with a grain of salt. I lived in Singapore for the last year purposefully so I could see it from the outside, or see my own country back from the outside. And we change every 4 years, right? And so what I say today might not be true in 4 years. It might not even be true in a week, depending on what bills get passed. But so we are actually slanting towards getting rid of the freelance economy. And we're not going to get rid of freelancers. We're just going to force freelancers to always have an intermediary layer, because for us, the current party in power, they are very, very pro-union. And they don't understand freelancers, and they think that freelancers are these exploited classes of people that can't speak for themselves. And so we actually have some rules coming down the pipeline that, if they pass, threaten to literally get rid of all US freelancers, which will not stop the freelance economy in any way. It'll simply get clients to hire non-US freelancers, just like how right now the same laws, they're hiring non-California freelancers.
Yeah.
So at a high level, UK is very, very well positioned. If you are a content writer, if you're a journalist, if you're a designer, and you're sitting in the middle of London, you're sitting anywhere in the UK, you should be thinking to yourself, this is the opportunity to seize, this is an opportunity to thrive, and you can literally get your book of business all around the world. You don't have to think about just the UK, and you're in a very, very strategic position because you already are like the perfect freelancer. But with that said, always have to take these things with a grain of salt, because politically you don't know necessarily what's going to happen.
I think you hit on the shift that's currently happening, Matt, right? We're focusing on the UK market. UK market was predominantly a contractor market, right? Not maybe a freelancer market. A lot more of the creatives, you're right, have moved into freelancers. Copywriting being the key one, right? And UX, UI design as well. A lot of that has moved from being traditional contractors to freelancers, largely because of IR35. But then traditionally, the biggest hirers of contract resource in the UK were the banks, right? And that's changed, but there was such a massive amount, and we're talking tens of thousands, all working on, in a site, whether it be in Edinburgh, Canary Wharf, 9 to 5 on a day rate, doing a job that a permanent could do. And that's where the IR35 came in.
Yeah.
But what we are starting to see finally, after all the panic, because we've obviously had Brexit and IR35, it's like double storm. The thing you're actually seeing is that it can create a positive, right? It can create a lot of great talent can then go out and work for various clients at various times and actually use a lot of the platforms. Because I think in the UK traditionally, especially when I was coming through at staffing side, platforms like Upwork, that was never a competitor. Nobody that we used ever used that. But there is a shift coming, and I think we're right in the middle of that shift. And then you've got the perfect storm in the UK of like remote work traditionally wasn't like, if you were a data scientist in Inverness, which is away up the north of Scotland, you would need to, get a 8-hour train journey on a Sunday to London, and then you need to come back up on Friday night. And that would be a way you work. But that's gone, right? And I don't see that coming back. So no, I would agree. We're right in the middle of a huge sea change. It'll be interesting to see. And that was part of the reason why we timed this now and not later.
And one technology wave too, just to look at some signals, right, from a technology perspective, payment processors have come a long way. And it might be the payment processors that enables a contractor, like you mentioned, in the north of UK, to never ever have to go into an office. And we can't underestimate how important that is, because like a company like Payoneer, right, they can handle international payments. That's huge. And it might not be a government that figures this out, but it might be a private, private fintech company that figures out, hey, you can be a freelancer and never have to worry about your country's own political problems. Just like sort of the cryptocurrency promises, but we won't get into that.
We'll leave that one for another day.
That can be a different chat.